What's up guys, my name is Brian, the owner of Engine Customs and Performance. Today I'm going to show you how to replace all three engine mounts on a Fiat 500 Abarth. Let's get started. So we're going to be replacing a total of three mounts, including the driver's side, which is also the transmission mount for the manual transmission, the passenger side engine mount, which is actually the most common mount to fail because this part in here will end up breaking and this will move back and forth. And then we're also going to be replacing the torque arm mount, which is located at the rear of the engine. So let's go over the tools you're going to need to get the job done. Check it out. You're going to need a 1/2 inch, a 3/8 inch, and a 1/4 inch socket wrench, a 3/8 inch and a 1/4 inch extension, a rubber or wooden block, a 10, 18, and 22 millimeter wrench, an 8, 10, 13, 14, 15, and 19 millimeter socket, a 13 millimeter deep socket, an E18 socket, a set of exhaust pliers, an adjustable or monkey wrench, a small electric impact, and a heavy duty impact, and a can of PB blaster. So we're going to get started on the passenger side of the vehicle, and we need to remove the intake. Now on this vehicle, it's equipped with the Eurocompulsion V2.1 intake. If you have the factory intake, the procedure is almost identical. So we're going to remove the clamp that's located here, and that takes an 8 millimeter. And if you have the factory intake, there's going to be another clamp right here. We're also going to be removing these two hoses, and on the Eurocompulsion intake, there's another hose we need to remove right here. So I'm going to start, take my 8 millimeter socket, loosen that clamp. And again, if you have the factory intake, you'll loosen another clamp that's located right here. Press your two fingers in to remove this hose, and then we're going to just simply pull and disconnect that one. And then now I'm going to be able to move this up. And I'll get this one out. Just like that. And now, I'll move this back and forth to pull this out. The next step is to remove the factory skid plate. However, this particular vehicle doesn't have one on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut to one of our previous videos to show you how to remove it. All right, next step is we need to remove the factory skid plate. It's secured with 6 10 millimeter bolts that you can see here. Just take a 10 millimeter socket to remove them. Then just slide it back there. All right, now that we have the factory skid plate removed, the next step is we need to add support to this side of the engine, because when we remove that engine mount, this side of the engine no longer has anything to support it. So I just take a floor jack, and then I have a rubber block. You can also use a wood block, and we're actually going to raise it up just to slightly press on the oil pan. Don't worry, it's not going to cause any damage or anything. It's just there for support while you have that mount removed. So I'm just going to raise it up like so. There we go. All right, so now it is supporting this engine, so it'll stay in the same spot when I remove that mount. Now we need to move the coolant reservoir out of the way to gain access to the engine mount. Now it's secured with a 10 millimeter bolt here, and then a 10 millimeter nut right here, which is where we're actually going to begin. So I'm going to take my small 1/4 inch socket wrench with an extension and 10 millimeter socket and remove it. Can't really get an impact in there. So this one, a lot of times you have to do by hand, but once you break it loose, then you can just unscrew it with your hand. and then set it aside. And now we're going to remove this bolt, which I can use my impact, 10mm socket. Grab it with my hand here. And now this becomes free, and you can move it out of the way like so. And now we have a clear shot of the passenger side engine mount. All right, now we need to remove this bolt, and then there's also one that's buried under these wires right here. They all require a 15mm socket. I'd recommend using a heavier duty impact to remove them. So pretty much get them out and then use your fingers to pull the bolt out. That's how long they are. And the second one. And again, this third one is kind of buried. I just take with my extension and 15mm socket, just kind of push in there, and you'll find it. All right, now we need to remove these 3 bolts, which take a 14mm socket. Again, I would recommend using a heavy duty impact on this one. Last one. All right, and now this one is out. And as you can see here, we have a broken engine mount. This should not move at all. All right, now it's time to install the new passenger side engine mount. And as you can see here, no movement. All right, so just put it into place here, slide it in, and line it up with the holes. Okay, now we need to put the bolts in. Best practice is to get all the bolts started before you tighten them down. So I'm going to start with the ones that actually connect to the engine, and those are the bolts that take a 14mm socket. So I'm going to line those up in place, get the threads started, like so. There's 2 out of 3, and the last one. By not tightening them down, you have some play or movement to line everything up, because once you tighten them down, this will line up perfectly. So I've got these in. Now let's get the other bolts in. All right, now we're going to line these bolts back in. Again, just start it with your fingers, get the threads going. All right, there's that one. Get this one. Go. Just get started. Now we're gonna get this one that's buried under here. All right, once you've got all the bolts started, then just take your heavy duty impact to tighten them down. We're gonna start with the 3 on the left, which is the 15mm socket. And now these 3 are the 14mm socket. Now you'll notice that as you tighten the first one down, you'll probably see the whole engine move. That's just showing you that everything is secured. All right, now we need to go ahead and reinstall this bracket that secures the reservoir in place. So I'm gonna place that back down. Take my bolt, start it with my fingers, and then tighten it down. All right, now we need to re-secure the overflow tank or coolant reservoir. And once you got it in the right spot, you've got your 10mm bolt. Just start it with your fingers. And once you've got it there, tighten it down with a 10mm socket. All right, now take your nut, secure the other side. Start it with your fingers. Just spin it on there. And then finish it off, 1/4 inch socket wrench extension and 10mm socket. All right, now go ahead and reinstall the intake. Now, since I'm reinstalling the Eurocompulsion V2, it's slightly different from the factory, but just make sure you get all your hoses hooked up. Slide your intake onto the turbo. And then tighten down your clamps once everything else is installed. All right, so now that we're done installing the passenger side engine mount, we're gonna move on to the driver side engine mount. All right, so the first step is we need to remove the battery. You'll probably have some sort of cover over the positive terminal. Just set that aside. And depending on the year model that you have, if you have an early model, you're gonna need to use a 10mm wrench on both the positive and the negative. If you have a 13, you need a wrench on the positive, and then you can just use a socket wrench on the negative. And typically 14 or 15 and newer, it's a socket wrench on both sides. So I'm gonna start. Always disconnect the negative terminal first. And then we're going to remove the positive terminal. Now, with the positive terminal removed, we now want to disconnect the ECU, which you have these two yellow tabs. Push them out, pull these tabs off. And just kind of set them to the side. Now we have the battery holder here. Takes a 13mm socket. Take that bolt out. You can set this piece aside. And now you can pull the battery straight out. All right, now we need to remove the ground cable from the ECU from the negative terminal. Just takes a 10mm. Take that off, and then you can set the negative terminal aside. All right, now we need to remove the battery tray that also houses the ECU. You're gonna see there's a nut down here, and then you've got two bolts here. They all require a 13mm socket. Pull those out. All right, after you get those two bolts and nut out, you're gonna have a few wires that you just have to disconnect from the tray. There's some right here. Then you can lift up and pull the tray out. All right, now underneath the vehicle, you need to move your floor jack over to where you're right underneath the transmission. So that's where you want to put your support before you remove the mount. So just take, again, either a wooden block or a rubber block, press up against it just enough to support it. And now let's go back up top. All right, now you can see the mount here, and it's got a total of 3 bolts. The one in the center takes a 19 millimeter, and the 2 on the ends take a 15 millimeter. So we're gonna start with the center bolt. Now I take a couple extensions, and I take my 1/2-inch socket wrench. Now you may need to use a breaker bar to break them loose. So I'm gonna start. This one loosened pretty quickly. So I'm just gonna loosen them first. And then I'll use an impact to take them out. All right, that one worked pretty well. And this one worked pretty well. All right, we're gonna finish off by using an impact. And now the mount comes right out. All right, let's take a look at these 2 mounts. This is the old one, and this is the new one. Now on this driver's side mount, you're probably not gonna see a whole lot of difference, but some of the things I can see is we've got some of the rubber is kind of worn away on the sides, and I can push it just a little bit. So there's a little bit of flexing. Now if I take the new one, not as much, and there's not as much rubber gone on the edges. Again, it's not a lot, but it's worth replacing since this vehicle has 115,000 miles. So let's go ahead and put this new one in. All right, now let's go ahead and put this one in place. Just kind of line it up. Now what I start with is the center bolt. Just try to start it by hand. Okay, now we're gonna get the other 2 bolts, put them in. And don't forget, these bolts also have washers. So make sure you reuse the washers as well. All right, now take your impact. We're gonna start with the center bolt. Again, it's a 19 millimeter. Tighten it down. All right, now I'll get the 2 side bolts, 15 millimeter socket. All right, now we're gonna put the battery tray back in. There's no real art to this. You just kind of have to work it in there. The trick is finding the little stud right here, so then you can position it where it needs to be. All right, go ahead and put your 2 bolts back in, as well as your nut, and then tighten them down with a 13 millimeter. All right, place your battery back in. We're going to start with the hold down. Place that here, and put your longer bolt in. Get started by hands, and then tighten it down. All right, now we're going to reconnect the ground wire for the ECU. Slide that back on and start the nut, and tighten it down with a 10 millimeter. And now go ahead and place the negative terminal back on the battery, and then tighten it down. And now you can tighten down the positive terminal. Use your 10mm wrench to tighten it down. And you want to make sure that these terminals are tight, because if they're loose, it can cause electrical issues. All right, then reconnect the ECU cables. Press down, press here, press the tab in. And same thing on the other side. And if you have a cover, put the cover back on. All right, now it's time to install the last mount, which is the torque arm mount, which is done underneath the vehicle. All right, underneath the vehicle, we need to remove this lower frame brace first. That takes a 19mm socket. What I do is I break them all loose first. All right, and then finish off with an impact. All right, now we need to remove the O2 sensor. Now I've gone ahead and sprayed it with a little PB blaster first and let it soak for a few minutes. So now I can easily break it loose. Once you break it loose, you can usually just twist it with your hands, but you may have to come back with the wrench afterwards. All right, should just twist on out, and then you can just set it somewhere to the side. All right, now we need to remove these two nuts, and they require a 13mm socket. I would recommend spraying these with some PB Blaster or WD-40 and let them soak for about 5 to 10 minutes before you attempt to take them off. I would not recommend using an impact. Use hand tools so they don't strip the studs. All right, now we need to remove this bolt that secures the mid pipe to the oil pan. Just take a 13mm socket, and you can use an electric impact on this one. All right, now we need to remove this exhaust hanger from the mid pipe so we have enough clearance to move this out of the way. Take a set of exhaust pliers, get it in position, and then push the mid pipe out of the hanger. And now we have enough clearance to be able to push it to the side while we remove the mount. All right, now we're going to go ahead and remove this torque mount. You've got a bolt here and you've got a bolt right here. We're going to start with this one. It takes an 18mm socket or a wrench. I'm going to be using a wrench. And then take an adjustable wrench, or some people call it a monkey wrench. But get it on this side and then loosen it to get the bolt out. You can use your fingers towards the end just to pull the bolt completely out. And now you can see you can move the engine pretty easily. All right, the last bolt takes an E18 socket. You can also substitute it with a 14mm socket, like a 12-point, if you don't have one of these. and then the mount comes right out. Okay, let's take a look at the two mounts. Now on the left you have the old one, and then on the right you have the new one. Take a look between the difference of the two. See how much you have in here where the rubber is just deteriorated, and now look at the new one, how much more rubber there is on this one. Now watch this. When I take the old one, I can take my thumb and I can move this thing around pretty easily. It's not completely broke, but it's pretty worn out. Now you're gonna have some movement on this one, but not near as much as the old one. All right, before we install the new torque mount, we're actually going to install one of these inserts. Now this insert is made by PowerFlex, and we also offer another one in red made by NewSpeed. Now this insert, very easy. You just put a little bit of lubrication, like some oil or just some grease you can put on here, and then it literally just goes right in like so. Just press it down. And what this does is it actually eliminates a little bit of movement, especially when you're shifting gears. The engine can still rock. This helps to prevent that. So now let's go ahead and get this installed. All right, now we're gonna put the new mount in. We're just gonna slide it into place. We're gonna go ahead and slide both bolts in and get them started. So you may have to move the mount around just a little bit. And I start with the E18 bolt. Just put it in as much as you can with your fingers. And now we're gonna go ahead and put the other bolt in. Once you see it slide all the way through, you can put the nut on and get it started. And now we're going to tighten them down. All right, we're going to go ahead and tighten this bolt. Again, it's an E18 socket, or you can use a 14 millimeter 12 point. All right, make sure it's nice and tight. All right, now we're going to tighten this bolt, this nut. Again, I've got my adjustable wrench or monkey wrench, and my 18 millimeter wrench here. And we're going to tighten it down. All right, make sure this one's nice and tight. All right, and it's in. All right, now we need to reattach the mid pipe to the exhaust hanger. Just line it up and press it back in. All right, so now we're going to take the mid pipe. We're going to line it back up on the studs. Press it up, and now we're going to take this adjustable or movable bracket, set it in place. We're going to go ahead and take that bolt and start screwing it in with your hands. And once you got it snug, then you can finish with a 13 millimeter socket. All right, now we're going to put the two nuts back onto the studs. Just start them with your fingers first. And then we're going to tighten them down with a 13 millimeter socket. Just make sure they're snug. But don't over tighten them, because you'll either strip the stud or you'll have a really hard time if you ever have to take these off in the future. All right, now we got to put the O2 sensor back in. Now I twist it to the left as much as I can, and then I put it in to the O2 bung in the mid pipe, and then I tighten it as much as I can with my fingers. And then I tighten it completely with a 22 millimeter wrench. Again, this is one you don't want to over tighten it. But you do want to make sure it's nice and snug. All right, now we're going to put the brace back on. Start by putting all the bolts in first. You screw them in with your fingers. And then you're going to tighten them down with a 19mm socket. All right, now put your skid plate back on. Once you line it up, put your bolts back in and use a 10mm socket to tighten it down. So this concludes the video on how to replace all 3 engine mounts on your Fiat 500 Abarth. If you're interested in purchasing these engine mounts for your Fiat, you can do so directly on our website at enginecustomsandperformance.com. And if you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any future install videos or awesome Abarth content. And until next time, I'm out.